everyone, and welcome to the program. My name is Sheun Okimbaloye. It came as a shock to many, but others, well, it came as a sort of disappointment. Well, not a scenario unfamiliar to the Nigerian electoral system. The postponement of the Edo State Governorship election, which by now we should be knowing who wins the poll, was postponed for 2 weeks. That has generated controversies. Politicians, election observers and voters have been speaking on the development. Well, as it stands now, the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Ibrahim Idris, says Nigerians should trust their judgment and not draw any political coloration to the shift in the date of the exercise. But trust me, some politicians do not trust. Some of them claim the police has connived with a political party to screw the exercise in their favor. Beyond the back and forth, we look into what the shift in date holds for Nigerian elections and the role of security. Well, a former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Odinkalu, joins me now from our Abuja studio to discuss this issue. Thank you so much, Professor Odinkalu, for joining us on the program. Let me start by asking you, Professor Odinkalu, how did the news of the postponement of the election based on security advisory, how did it come to you?
Well, it came to me by the mass media precisely the way it came to most other Nigerians. And I believe that the response, by and large, was somewhere between surprise and astonishment. I think that's the way to put it. It's somewhere between surprise and astonishment, and I do think that many Nigerians will be forgiven for thinking that this is far from edifying. It's not exactly the best advertisement for our country at the particular time.
As some people will say, well, security excuse or security reasons for postponing the election. But again, when we look at it, we've seen this before. In February of 2015, this has happened. But the date as released by INEC does not come a week to the election. One will be wondering, is it the capacity of the security agencies that is in question now, or is something that we should accept whenever it comes like that?
No, you see, Sheon, I think it's important that we try and look at the sequence of things. First of all, at the beginning of the week, the president is sent to Edo State, correct? The president campaigns in Benin. The day after, the police read the riot act to bring back our girls in Abuja. And the day after that, the police, the Nigerian Police Force and the DSS are running scared from Edo State. And when you tell Nigerians, trust us, you see, Nigerians have also got to be rational. And there is one thing, if there is one thing you cannot play politics with, is safety and security. Now, the release of the assessment, so-called, by the security agencies would have been more compelling if it had drawn on existing patterns of operations and established a relationship to the safety of the exercise of the franchise in Edo State. None of this. There was no pretension to trying to speak to Edo State. What do we know? Boko Haram has not run any operations in Edo State. There's been no bombing incident in Edo State in the past since this administration has been in existence. That's one. Edo State has not been a major theater of operations of any attacks. The second thing is that this administration has actually made safety and security the fulcrum of its program. And you've got to give the administration credit that the one area in which it's actually made progress is in safety and security, with reference to the Northeast. So the proposition that Nigerians are invited to trust the security agencies on is that an administration which has made progress in addressing safety and security in the most difficult parts of Nigeria in the northeast has got to run scared from elections in Edo State, where there has been no history, no recent history of any operations by the insurgents since this administration, and at a time when the same security agencies are flexing their muscles for citizens doing perfectly lawful things in Abuja. That, with all due respect, actually tasks credulity.
It's interesting.
That's the best way to put it. It tasks belief.
Yeah.
And at a time when citizens need to trust the security agencies, this is difficult.
When the police, Inspector General of Police said that there is no political coloration and anybody should not draw any political coloration, but the politicians, of course, are drawing that and bringing that to bear. How difficult is it to trust, anyways, what the police tells Nigerians regarding this election? Because INEC had said until about 6 p.m. of Thursday evening, the police had not gotten to them about the incident. The only thing they heard was announcement from Abuja that the election should be postponed for about 2 weeks. And one would be wondering, in this case, who should first know about the postponement of an election, if not INEC?
Now, to begin with, there is a mechanism of coordination between INEC and an interagency mechanism of coordination in relation to election security, which is hosted by the Office of the National Security Advisor. It's been a standing practice for a long time. It's been there for a while. And if there was credible intel that the franchise in Edo was at risk because of matters related to safety and security, all that had to have been done was to trigger an existing interagency process of monitoring for security assessments. That was not done. The conclusion that most people therefore would reach is that this decision was taken outside the ambit of INEC, outside the ambit of the channels existing for coordination on this particular matter, and in a manner that interferes with the independence of INEC. And INEC did its best to try and resist this, but in the end, INEC had to kowtow precisely because the official agencies declined to cooperate with it in delivering elections in Edo State. They declined to help in the distribution of sensitive material, storage of sensitive material, protection of sensitive material, and INEC could not deliver, therefore, on its mandate. And this, quite honestly, is very disturbing. Nigerians have got to ask questions. The invitation by the Inspector General of Police, newly confirmed as it is, for Nigerians to trust him, beggars belief. If this is his performance in his first week of work, Nigerians are entitled to have difficulties believing him. And he's got to do a lot more to earn the trust of Nigerians, because right now he's not got anything to thread on the trust matter. Sorry.
Again, another issue that comes to the fore is that some election observers have said, look, this is a clear interference on the role and the independence of INEC by the executive. Do you see it as so?
Now, look, I've tried to give you the sequence of facts as they are, okay? And we're not dealing with rocket science here. We're Nigerians, we live in Nigeria, and we've got to deal with the facts as we see them. Now, if you're saying that in a theater in which there have been no active insurgent operations that we know of, and in a theater in which there has been no improvised explosive incident in the last 2 years, all of a sudden, on the eve of an election in which the ruling party does have crisis of retaining the position, the security services all of a sudden discover that they discover casus belli for deferring the franchise without any rational explanation, citizens should believe that you've got to rise to a level of credibility that this particular release does not rise to. That is the plain fact. Now, you've got to, and a lot of people will say, well, it happened in 2015. Now, in 2015, we had metrics for trying to reach a conclusion. Everybody did agree that the National Security Advisor in 2015, I believe every reasonable Nigerian did agree, was out of line to have gone to London and told Nigerians what should happen in our elections. That was entirely out of order. But it was also the case that ahead of the 2015 general elections, that's St. Valentine's Day 2015, we had metrics. There were figures on collection of PVCs. We showed disparities. We showed that you could actually draw a correlation, if not indeed causation, between the insurgency in some parts of Nigeria and levels of collection or non-collection of PVCs. Correct? And on the basis of that, you could reach some conclusions as to whether or not, as a matter of fact, some parts of Nigeria were going to be affected adversely in the exercise of their franchise. That was not the case here. But let's even grant that everything that happened in 2015 was wrong. This current administration was elected on the mandate of change. And this current administration has made progress on safety and security. If the best argument that can be put forward is, you know what, we are doing just as badly as our predecessors in government did, that is a terrible indictment on where we are. And I don't think that anybody should raise that at all.
We've had, just a bit of diversion from the issue of the election. We heard what Professor Wole Soyinka said about the role of the police in the Bring Back Our Girls campaign and their protest. And now we're looking at the election. The role of the police is on the table. These two now standing side by side. What do you make of the police as it's currently operating and some of their recent activities?
Look, I'm not. I don't want to slate the police too much. The police do a difficult job in a difficult context, and a lot of the men and women of the police force do that job to the best of their ability, notwithstanding tremendous difficulty. So I also want to be careful in what I say. But that said, I think my personal view is that the leadership of the police force has not this week covered itself in a lot of plaudits. I think the bullying of Bring Back Our Girls is entirely out of line. I think the police is taking us back to well before our democratic dispensation. The idea of claiming a disposition, a competence to license demonstrations lacks any basis in our constitution, lacks any basis in fact, is an overreach of the grossest proportions. And I think the enthusiasm of the newly confirmed leadership to show rather narrow loyalty is entirely misplaced in my view. I think that we've got a country that is trying, in spite of difficulties, to build a democratic tradition. I think that law enforcement should fall in line and not subvert or indeed try to destroy the gains that we have won. We would not have had alternance in 2015 unless we tried to consolidate these gains. And having got where we are, I don't think it is the brief of any newly appointed police leadership to take us back to where we don't want to be as a country.
We take a moment, and when we return, we shift our attention slightly from the issues of elections and security to some policies of government and the way forward. The matter of change begins with me. Join us again.